Okay, so this one we're going to take a look at a few examples that deal with personal loans, lines of credit, and some overdrafts. Now, all of this stuff is still the same of what we've done. We're looking at interest. So if we look at this first example here, Richard's car insurance of $1,400 was due in 2 days, but he didn't have the money. Okay, so he went to a payday loan store, which I can highly recommend to never ever go to. He had to repay the store $1,635.20 within 14 days. So they're asking, what is the what is the interest rate, daily interest rate for this loan, and what's the annual interest rate for this loan? So what we're looking at here, we first want to identify, okay, so if he owes $1,400 originally, okay, and he looks and he has to repay the store $1,635, what's the total interest? Not the interest rate, but the interest that he owes. Okay, so the interest is going to be the total amount paid minus the principal amount owed. So $1,635.20 minus your $1,400 to give you. Okay, in this session we're going to look at some personal loans, lines of credit, and overdrafts. So first of all, if you could go to page 315 in your workbook, take a read over about those definitions and make sure you understand what they mean. I want to stress that here we're not learning anything new. We're just tweaking what we already know. Essentially, we'll be using our simple interest formula, which is I equals PRT. Remember, that means P, the principal, times the interest rate, times the amount of time. We also are going to be looking at identifying R, the interest rate. And remember, R is the same as I divided by P times T. And again, remember to use those brackets in your calculator when you're making the calculations. We also have to bear in mind that this I here deals with the interest rate, not the interest rate, the interest amount only, not the total. The total amount, which is usually referred to as A, which is what is given when we do our compound interest, okay? Our total amount is the principal plus the interest. So often we're going to twist around this formula to find out what the interest is, and that'll be the total amount minus the principal. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 formulas, but these two are really the same, just twisted, and these two are really the same, just looking at different variables that we're solving for. So let's take a look and go through an example. Okay, so let's read through this example. Richard's car insurance of $1,400 was due in 2 days, and he did not have the cash available. So he went to a payday loan store for a loan, and he had to repay the store $1,635.20 within 14 days. So they're asking for what is the daily interest rate and what is the annual interest rate. So in both they're looking for the R, but the key is we want to look for the key words. Okay? So first let's just start it off and we'll come back to that. So if you borrow $1,000 from someone and you pay them back $1,000, you've not been charged any interest. Zero interest. You're paying back only the principal amount that you borrowed. Okay, when you borrow from family or good friends, that's often the way it goes. Not so the case when we're looking at borrowing, especially from payday loan stores. They will charge you just shy of your arm and your leg. So I highly recommend not going there. It really has to be an emergency, and you do have to have a plan to be able to pay it back, or you're going to be just in deep trouble. So with that said, let's take a look at the question. So in this case, we're borrowing the $1,400, but we're not paying back just $1,400. We're paying back $1,635.20. So this is our principal amount, and this will be the total amount we pay back. So the interest that we are being charged, the interest amount, is going to be the total amount paying back minus the original amount we had borrowed. And that's going to give us $235.20. So that is our I, that's our amount of interest. So we have I, we have P, and we have our T. Our T is 14 days. Now that is important, 14 days. So when we do question A, our T is in days, but they're asking for the daily interest rate. So we don't have to do a conversion here. So we go to our formula, R equals, and if we look back up here, right, we're going to be using this formula where we're looking for R. Okay, R is I divided by P times T. I'm putting the brackets in so you remember to do that in your calculator. Okay, so 235.20 divided by our 1,400 times 14. I am not dividing by 365 because days and daily, they match. So that cancels out and works out okay. So plugging it into our formula, we are going to put in 235.20 divided by, then we are going to use our open bracket and type in 1,400 times 14, close bracket, and then hit the equal sign to get our answer of 0.012. Now you might think this is the answer, but it's still not quite. This is in decimal form. We want the interest rate, which will be in a percent form. So remember, and I'm going to go to red so you can see it nice and clear, 1, 2, okay? So that's 1.2% daily, okay? So that's our part A answer. Now B is asking for the same thing, but yearly, per year, or annually. So same idea. R equals I divided by PT. Okay, so 235.20, that hasn't changed. Still equals 1,400 times. Now we are going to divide that by 365 so that our T is in years, so that it can match the question being annually. Okay? So again, now I'm going to tell you exactly how to put it in your calculator. I'm going to write this one right out for you. 235.20. Then you're going to hit the divided by button. I'm going to move this up. Then you're going to hit the open bracket. You're going to type in your 1,400 times 14 divided by 365, close bracket, equals. And do that in your calculator right now with me and confirm that you get the same as me, which is 4.38. Now, especially with a number this big, you might forget to be finished. You are not. That is in decimal form. You've got to convert it over. Okay, so 4.38. I'm going to jump to red again here. Move the decimal or multiply by 100. It is 438% annually. Compare that to the questions we were doing, what our bank gives us to borrow our money in a savings account, which is something like 1.2% or less. This is 438%. I cannot stress enough to avoid these things like the plague. They are great for emergencies, but if you can never go to one, that would be just awesome, because they got to make their money, and boy, are they making it off of you. So be very careful of these places. So that is one way to do it. Another way is if this is the answer for daily, then 1.2 times 365 will give you your yearly, where if you put it in your calculator, you end up with 438% as well. Now, be aware, doing it in this case, these are both exactly the same, and that's because here we didn't have to do any rounding. It worked out perfectly. But often you will have different answers depending on which way you do it. Show your work, and I don't mind which way you do it unless it says specifically in the question, but that will give you full marks either way, as long as you're showing your work, and you should show your work with every question. Let's move on to another example, one that uses a chart, a personal loan payment chart. So we'll get that set up. Okay, actually, before we go to the loan calculator sheet, we're going to look at another example just to nail this down. Sophia borrowed $500 from a payday loan store and agreed to repay it in 30 days at a rate of 1.15% per day. Okay, not per year, per day. How much will Safia have to repay? Okay, so in this one, we've got to find the interest. We've got the principal, we've got the time in days, the interest rate is in days. So see how it matches, right? Days and per day, so we don't have to do a manipulation. We don't have to divide this 30 by 365 in this case, because we're matching days with days. Okay, so our I equals PRT, which is 500 times 0.0115. Remember to move this and add your zero. Go back and get extra practice if you need it doing these converting from percents to decimals, decimals to percents. It's critical to be able to have do that confidently every time. Okay, so that's P times R times T, and we're going to get 172.50. Okay, so that's our I. We have to read the question carefully. How much will Safia have to repay? Well, it's not just $172.50, or everybody would be going to these payday loan stores, because you'd borrow $500 and pay back a lot less. No, you've got to add it together. So A is your principal plus your interest. So you're paying back the original $500 you owed, or you borrowed, and you're adding another $172.50. So that's $672.50 is the total amount that Safia will have to pay back. Okay, so now we're going to get set up for another example. Okay, this next answer example is going to look at using a personal loan payment calculator. Now this chart, the important thing that you've got to identify here is when you borrow at a certain interest rate for a certain amount of time, here it shows from 1 through 5 years, okay, this will end up, so at 3% for 1 year, this $84.69 is the monthly payment that you will pay back per every $1,000 borrowed. Okay, so if you borrow $2,000, then you would have to pay monthly 2 times this $84.69. If you borrowed $3,000, you would have to pay back 3 times $84.69 every month, okay? This is monthly. Okay, so let's take a look at a question dealing with that, okay? So Stanley borrowed $4,500, and the loan that he got, it's a personal loan, okay? He had an annual interest rate of 5.75% amortized over 3 years, okay? So if we go back to that chart and look at 575 over, hold on, let's get this going. 575 over 3 years, okay? This is where we end up, 3031, okay? So 3031, that's right, is the monthly payment per $1,000 borrowed, okay? So the simple way to change that, depending on how much you borrowed, okay, is to put the amount you borrowed, divide it by 1,000, and then multiply by the number that you get in the chart based on your interest rate and amortization period. Okay, and we end up with 136.395. Don't forget when you're rounding that 5, always to 2 decimals when it's money. So it ends up being 136, sorry, that's messy. Let's do that again. 136.40. That 9 bumps up, so that is the monthly payment. Okay? So now it asks for B, calculate the total amount he will pay. And don't forget, it's over 3 years, right? That's part of the question. I'm outlining that because it tells you in this question, but it doesn't always say that. It'll say, what's the total amount he'll have to pay back? You'll have to go back and look what the time is. So 3 years, well, this is our monthly payment. So 3 years is 3 times 12, 36 months. Okay? So for B, we need to take our monthly payment and multiply by the 36 months that we'll be paying to get a total of $49,1040. Okay, that's the total amount he'll repay. All right. C, calculate the financial charge. The financial charge is like the interest amount, right? The financial charge is going to be what you got in answer B minus the principal amount, okay? So 49,1040, and we're going to subtract the original amount that we borrowed, 4,500, to get a total of 410.40. So that is the financial charge. That's over and above what you borrowed. That's the cost it is for you to be able to borrow that $4,500. And so that is the final answer there. So hopefully you've got enough information here that you can go through, work through the workbook questions. Have fun.